everyone, and welcome to another episode of Annie Talks, where we bring to you interesting stories about interesting people that you want to know about. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. Thank you for tuning in, and to those who have already subscribed. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. And if so, I personally invite you to subscribe. Annie Talks is brought to you by Luxwear Trends, affordable, luxurious timepieces for every occasion, luxury that lasts forever, and that's what sets us apart from others. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit luxweartrends.com. That's Luxe weartrends.com. One thing I enjoy about my podcast is getting to know my guests no matter the topic, whether we're highlighting an amazing athlete, talking with entertainers or entrepreneurs. I absolutely love talking with guests. And I've said it before, I love behind the scenes or a great backstory. My guest on this episode is Leonard Dozier, who is a multifaceted actor, voice actor, recording artist, songwriter, and musician who is one of the primary voices for NFL films. His distinctive voice can be heard on the 2016 TV program NFL Films Presents Tommy Brasher and the Super Bowl 51, the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. Leonard says it's been a long time, lifetime goal since he started voiceover work at the age of 19. Leonard shares his success story and even some of his low points, a family tragedy, and even shares about his upcoming record project, with which we have a very small sample for you all to listen to. All of this in this packed episode, so without further ado, here now is my conversation with Leonard Dozier. Leonard, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, truly appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome, Annie. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's jump right in. Why don't you give us a sense of your background, your hometown, and basically kind of the road to becoming the entertainer and the voice actor that you are. You have man of many hats, and I'd love to
Yes.
touch on each of those. So tell us about that.
Certainly not to disparage any group, but I get called a Jamaican sometimes for the amount of careers and that I have. But
you have 10 jobs.
Yeah. But yeah, longtime actor, accomplished actor, voice actor, singer, songwriter, producer, coach, writer. And as I said, I think in the Instagram live feed, usually when you have that many hats, probably one or two of those things you excel in, and the others are kind of like hobbies. But in all of those, with all of those hats that I just mentioned, I make a living, and so that's a rare thing to be able to work in all of those arenas and be well regarded in each of those arenas. 39 years old, Southern Jersey guy, born here in Southern New Jersey, close to the shore, which is the Atlantic City area. And in terms of the journey, I mean, it's my, for me, Annie, this is, we talked about faith a little bit in starting, and, God's path for me has been unbelievable, because if you would have said to me at 13 or 14 that I'd be doing any of the, operating in any of these fashions that I just chronicled, I would have laughed hysterically. My aspirations were to be a basketball player and into sports, and so there's no way you could have told me at 14 that I'd be an actor or narrating for the NFL or releasing albums or any of that kind of stuff. That would have never would have never crossed my mind.
Well, you have quite the accomplished resume. I was reading through your resume. I mean, I from start to finish, and you're not even finished. You just keep going. So tell seriously. So of all your accomplishments, what do you consider to be like your most treasured project?
Woo! Oh man, that's hard.
or maybe you have several. So yeah,
Yeah, but you
touch
know
on that.
what? I'd have to nail it down to the NFL films
Mm,
narration work. I think being one of the voices of the NFL and NFL films.
mm-hmm.
Once that happened for me, it was just, everything else from there is gravy. You know,
Yeah.
I think about my journey as a young man breaking into voiceover work, and if you're a voice actor for an iconic organization like NFL Films, I mean that's pretty much like the top of the food chain, and it's very very
Mm.
difficult to get on as one of their narrators. So to for that to happen, it was everything else from there was for me. So I kind of live in this la la land of
Mhm.
hey, I've accomplished really the penultimate goal for myself.
So, can you share with us how that came about? How did you become the voice of NFL?
Well, your audience, my audience, is going to love this because I've never told this story. My close associates know this, but not very many.
Oh,
As a voice actor, my top goal as a voice actor was to narrate for the NFL. I felt that that was the penultimate job.
mm-hmm.
And I tried desperately for about 3 or 4 years to even get someone on the phone that would even give me a listen. And I mean, I would get nowhere, Annie. I'd get to the secretaries, the gatekeepers. I'd leave all these messages. And I did this year after year after year. And, God works in mysterious ways because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if everyone remembers the story of this homeless man a few years ago who had this golden voice, and he had made national news for his voice, and I happened to I think it was the Cleveland Plain Dealer maybe that published the article on him, and so I read it, and sure enough, as I read the article, one of the senior producers' names was listed in the article for the NFL and NFL Films, and see,
Mm-hmm.
my problem was that I didn't have a name, and so I had no contact person there, and so I finally saw a name in the article, and
There
Andy,
you
that's all
go.
I needed. That
That
is
was
all
it.
I needed. I literally called that senior producer the next day, left a message, left my resume. Um, Boom, he called me back literally 2 days later,
Wow.
and he said, "Hey, yeah, send me over your demos." I sent my demos over. He loved them. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, we'd like to do a live audition with you. I'm going to have another senior producer audition you," and they basically auditioned me here from home at my home studio here. And a couple of days later, they said, "Leonard, welcome to the team." Um,
Oh my gosh. I
and
have goosebumps just listening to that. Oh,
yeah,
I'm
true
so
story.
happy for
True story.
you. Oh my goodness. That, I mean, so I was looking at some of the projects. I mean, congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
I'm super excited
Thank
for
you.
you. So I was looking at some of the projects. The voiceover for the NFL presents Super Bowl, is it 51? The greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. The NFL films narrated by Leonard Dozier. So what does this all mean to you? I mean, you've touched on it, but this has to be, as you said, the pinnacle of
Oh yeah.
your career, but you're not done
Yeah.
yet. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean it's crazy because I know when I travel around the country, it's funny traveling around the country doing workshops and training and building the careers of other voice actors, and a lot of times they talk to me on the phone to register, and so I think because of the voice, they think they're going to see this salt and pepper, hair
uh,
guy, and they come in and like, what, you look like a baby, and so they they get shocked by that, but to answer your question, I mean Super Bowl 51 and 52, of course 51 was the Patriots win, and with 52 was huge, Annie, because I live about an hour from Philadelphia,
there you go.
and this is Eagles country here, and so of course with the Eagles winning, the day I got the call from the NFL that I would be narrating the highlight reel for Super Bowl 52, chronicling the Eagles win, it
Mhm.
was like, wow. And
Dream.
I mean, I knew I had the assignment even as I was watching the Super Bowl, so that gave it kind of a whole different twist. And of course the Eagles played the Patriots in
Mhm.
52, and the Patriots had won the year before, and I had already narrated the Patriots highlights. So I was really rooting for the Eagles big time because I said
Yeah.
I just did the Patriots last year, so it'd be nice to to do the hometown team here, which is the Eagles.
Yeah, no kidding. I absolutely love that story. That is super exciting to hear that. Now, I am a huge fan. We talked about this earlier. I'm a huge fan of behind the scenes stories and actions and things that are memorable. And I would really love it if you could share a memorable behind the scenes story. Can you tell us something?
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the interesting things that happened in my career was doing the film Turning Point a couple of years ago, and Turning Point was this amalgamation of Hollywood actors and Nollywood actors. So for those who are not familiar with Nollywood, Nollywood Nigerian film market, and the Nigerian film market is, I believe, the third largest film market in the world, behind Hollywood and Bollywood.
Okay.
So then you have Nollywood. And in fact, that film, Turning Point, was nominated for an African Oscar Award. So I had a supporting role in the film as this character named Dollar Rain, and it was an interesting character, to say the least. But I got a chance to work with some Hollywood actors here and some major Nigerian stars, and Ernie Hudson. If you remember, Ernie Hudson was one of the original Ghostbusters. From Different Strokes was in the film. Joe Estevez, who is Charlie Sheen's uncle, was in the film. Joe's a really, really great guy. So, I mean, all of them are really. Cinda Williams, the list goes on and on. And so the film premiered in London, and the director of the film, I think, somehow found out that I did this killer Obama impersonation. He said, listen, man, he said, I heard your impersonation. Tawali is his name. And he said, I heard your Obama impersonation. He said, you have to do one for the film as a tribute to the film. And he said, I'd like to open up the premiere with the tribute. And so I recorded, I was on the road and I was in my hotel and just recorded this very impromptu Obama tribute to the film, and it was something. It was really something, and I kind of gave him this whole bit of I want to congratulate Ni Tawalawi and Hexcentric Films, and I kind of made up all this stuff, and it was just a hoot, and the whole
how funny
the whole thing with this Obama thing is that here's another very fascinating story. 2009, I was on the road doing starring in a stage play called Battle Cry. It was right after Obama got elected. And so one of the actors, he said to me, he said, Leonard, you sound a lot like the president. And I, we were really good friends, so I was able to bust his chops. I said, yeah. I said, listen, man, every white guy now thinks, I'm going to sound like the president, or any black guy sounds like the president. He said, no. He said, no, you really do. And so as time went on, more and more people said to me, you sound a little like the president. And that's when I started tinkering around with impersonations. And what's interesting is oftentimes when I impersonate him, it's really very effortless because I think our timbres are very similar. And I understand his cadence. I mean, Obama as a speaker we're very similar in the sense that we both, if you catch Obama, he really thinks heavily before he speaks.
Right.
And I would definitely say that's true about me. You'll catch me thinking heavily before I say something. And so I think those cadences are very similar. So nonetheless, I mean, I started with impersonating Obama. And in 2012, when he was reelected, I did this series of YouTube videos where I called people up. And and it was probably one of the scariest things I've ever done because, I mean, there were people who were, Annie, there were people who were hysterical on the phone. I mean, they were emotional. I heard people dancing. I heard people screaming. And it wasn't until I revealed at the end that, hey, it's Leonard.
You bursted their bubble.
And I have people all the time that want me to call up relatives and family members and do the Obama thing on them. And in fact, I always said if I had more time, I'd do more with just making people feel good and laugh and Obama phone calls and so forth.
So now you have a link to that video, the one that you mentioned. So correct. So for all the listeners, I will have that link in the show notes below. So be sure to check it out. I think you'll be quite impressed and entertained by it. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. So now we're going to segue into something a little different in that, with the good comes the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you, we talked offline about a low point in your career. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how you were able to overcome that?
Yeah, I think when you're in any profession, but certainly the arts, I mean, I always say the arts, I honestly feel that most people trying to enter the arts today are badly mistaken about what they perceive it to be. I mean, it is, it's really a career for the insane. I believe it was Dustin Hoffman who said, it's it's the only industry where there's like 95% unemployment.
Uh-huh.
So there's really always a recession. And I think that, so to have the kind of fortune that I've had is just a testament to God's great call on my life, quite frankly.
Right.
And I know in 2007, it was a real low point because I hadn't made the full transition to my career full time. Like most actors, singers, dancers, writers, I mean, you typically work another job and this is your other profession or part-time, hustle on the side or so. This is one of the great stories I can ever tell, I think for your listeners, because if anybody among your listeners or my listeners are listening and you just feel a call to do something and go for your destiny. I mean, this story here tells a lot. My boss, I was a supervisor for the foster grandparent program. Mm-hmm. And so I supervised about 90 seniors, and it was my responsibility to place them in schools as they worked alongside teachers for a few hours a day as part of the senior corps program. So my boss had seen me in a play, and she had questioned me one day, and she said, I don't understand why you're here. It was the most shocking thing because, of course, I had a family. I'd just gotten married 3 years before. Mm-hmm. And so I had this family, this blended family that I was in charge of. And so certainly it was, I knew very well the reason I was there, it was very clear. Mm-hmm. But without warning, I come in one day and on a Monday morning, there's a pink slip on my desk. And I go into her office and I said, what is this all about? And she said, now you can go do what you should be doing.
Wow.
It was the craziest. I thank her every time I get a chance to. Sometimes she follows me on social media and she'll say, "Told you so, superstar," or that kind of stuff. It's an emotional thing for me because had she not fired me, who knows? I don't think you and I are meeting today. And, she had the wherewithal to go, nope. You're holding yourself hostage here, and but there was still a low point because, of course, you don't just get fired and then boom, the opportunities fly in. I mean, there was this window of time where I was still training, and I went back to my wife and I said, listen, my time is now. I said, I don't know what that means for us as a family. I don't know. I don't even know how we're going to pay our bills. I don't know. I said, but at this point, I've got to go for it. And my wife looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I got to go for it. I got to do it. And it was just that window of time where, I wasn't quite sure. And so you're depressed. You're, you're a bit disillusioned. But then it was boom, and once it happened, I never looked back.
I think that's a great story for all the entrepreneurs out there, and myself including, for those who have either, or come across a setback, an obstacle. I was laid off in January. Some people were, as like you, like both of us were let go basically, or decided on their own to take the leap of faith and leave their corporate jobs or their, stable income and take that leap of faith into something we're passionate about. So that to me, it is, oh gosh, it's so brave. And I know that's what I want to do. And I'm so glad that you did that. But for somebody like myself and people who are struggling with that,
yes.
what do you tell them? What do you tell them? Go do it. And, because like you, or at the time, I'm I worry about, well, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay
Oh
this? Or
yeah,
how am I going to do that?
yeah.
So what do you tell people that want to take those steps in that direction?
See, I'm such a faith guy. I really am
Yeah.
such a faith guy, and Annie, that means that. See, I kind of live in some ways by the motto that our realities are often our illusions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the illusions that are
Wow.
our reality, and I literally believe that. I believe that the job that you're working, this situation or circumstance in which you find yourself currently, is your illusion. It's the reality, or it's the illusion that really is your reality. The illusion being your dream, your calling, your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
That's your reality. But the challenge is, how do you get to that reality? And a lot of times, if you only see your current circumstance as your reality, that already is your greatest obstacle.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
and it's so easy to look at your need to pay bills, your need to do what you currently do. And one of the things I always say, I taught my kids this: find what you're good at to make a living, but find what you love to be alive.
Oh,
And
wow.
both of those phrases for me are um, um, huge tenets by which I adhere to live my life. And again, even with that being said, I know it took somebody else, it took another source, being my boss, to say to me, "Nope, you got to go because you are holding yourself back."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it is challenging. It's hard because I think one of the things I have found is that this path for me has led me with great passion to want to help others, and that's why I spend the time mentoring that I do. I work with a lot of voice actors around the country. In fact, I'm one of the leading voiceover coaches in the country, and so I
Wow.
spend a lot of time with building the careers of other students because I know that I just had a great hand. I had God's hand, and then I had a vessel like my boss who was able to say, "Look, dude,
Mm-hmm.
you got to get
Yeah.
and if you get out of here, I'm going to just fire you. That's what I'm going to do." And so I know that so many other people need lifelines, and so I try to be that for my mentees and students.
That's awesome. You had mentioned in the bio that you sent over to me, there was a blurb there you wrote about sending your daughter to college and then sending, but then
Yeah,
also,
yeah, no, absolutely,
are you okay with talking about
absolutely.
that?
Because I talked about how even with career success, like anybody else, life shows up, and Annie, this was one of the most, I think, tragic years I've ever experienced in life, and so I think to tragic and yet joyful. I mean, the mix of emotions, the emotional spectrum for me this year has been unbelievable. I mean, I'm here. We are in September, and we've got a
Mm-hmm.
few months before 2019, and I'm like, man, I'm. It's like, Lord, I've made it to this point and have a lot of energy left after what I and my family have endured. I mean, we had my stepdaughter in March, who I've raised or helped raise since she was 8. She lost her father like pretty suddenly
Oh,
uh,
wow.
at 55, and then 2 weeks later, my oldest daughter, who's 19, her little brother at 11 years old hung himself.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was and that backstory is very interesting because my 19-year-old daughter lost her mother at age
Mm-hmm.
30, 2009. And so in 2009, I went and got custody of her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so she had already dealt with tremendous tragedy in losing her mother
Yeah.
at such an early age. And then here we are, I guess 9 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I get a call from, and her mother uh, had 3 of them, and my daughter being the oldest, and so her youngest brother hung himself. And when I got the call from his father, it's one of the most harrowing calls I've ever received in life about anything, and to find out that the little boy had hung himself. So this happened 2 weeks later,
Mm.
and so it was wow,
Yeah.
you know, and so here it is, right, for me. I feel like, Annie, I've had like this tremendous favor in my life. I mean, I have had really, I can't complain about a thing. I mean, I've had just, God has just poured out his blessings to me in abundant ways. And I look at my 19-year-old daughter who's been handed the kind of grief that she has, and you go, man, where's the equity?
Yeah.
Where's,
Yeah.
she's
How do you make sense of all this? Yeah.
exactly, you know, and then, on the other side of the pendulum is my youngest daughter, who I just dropped off to college like 3 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and she and I are very, very close. And so there's me, this 39-year-old empty nester, which is not common. It's like, what do you do? People, they'll say to me, well, now you can do this and now you can travel. I'm like, guys, I've already been doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously. So there is this kind of, it's a weird, because you wake up and part of, this as a parent, your job is to care for your kids and worry about their needs and wants and where they have to be and where you have to take them and blah, blah, blah. And now that's not a reality for me. So it's like a semi-retirement.
Yeah.
It feels like, and so it's a weird thing. I mean, but I know that it's an emotional process for me, just dealing with the separation from my youngest daughter, really both daughters, because my oldest daughter just moved to New York City. And so,
Oh, wow.
so there is that sense. And of course, my stepkids are now adults. And so everybody's kind of now out in the world. And there is this just kind of new kind of reality for me. And I know people say to me, man, are you serious? You're 39 with like grown kids. And that just means I got started a little early. That's all.
Well, if anything, I'm sorry for all that you've gone through, and my heart goes out to you and your family, thoughts and prayers. But I think if anything, they had a role model, a positive role model in yourself to model after. So if anything, pat yourself on the back, because a man of faith and definitely a man of your stature and a man of your work ethic and passion, it have instilled those traits and those characteristics in your children, your blended family. So just know that, they're going to go out conquering the world because they had a perfect role model to pattern themselves after. So I thank you for that, for sharing and being brave and vulnerable and sharing those stories with us. So thank you for that. I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. We'll be right back after this short message from one of our sponsors. Comfotherm Thermal Wraps are designed to help relieve the pain and swelling in and around the jaw, especially after wisdom teeth extractions. For more information, visit comfotherm.com. That's comfotherm.com. Hey there, Annie Rivera here. Thanks for tuning in to Annie Talks. Be sure to tell your friends about subscribing to the podcast, and don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Doing so helps out with the algorithm and helps others to find this podcast too. I also invite you to like my Annie Talks Facebook page. There you'll find other news, information, upcoming events, and all sorts of things. Stay in the know with Annie Talks. I also invite you to join the Annie Talks Community Facebook group, where we carry the conversation from the podcast episode to the Facebook group. Ask questions about the episode, about a guest, about the locations, you name it. Ask away. This forum is for you. See you on the Annie Talks Community Facebook group. So now, what could you say was the light at the end of that dark tunnel for you? What brought you from that? What was your saving grace? What kind of helped you? I mean, you were always a positive person to begin with, but for someone out there right now who's maybe going through something similar, what can you tell them about, lift your head up, and what advice can you give them? And how did you get yourself through that?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions, Annie, really. And I think that the cliche answer is, I can say all this, all that I want to say about faith and optimism and just fighting through. And I feel like those are all cliches. I feel like that's what anybody would say. Because I think, if I could play devil's advocate here, I would say that there would be people who listen to the story and go, well, yeah, I mean, you're doing pretty well in life. And so even with those tragedies happening, you're going to be all right. But I think, the proper perspective is ultimately that God has really just embedded in me a certain light that I always say, and I did a keynote speech a couple of months ago in which I talked to some young leaders about what leadership means and what it means to face adversity and obstacles. And I think that when you are a true light, your light never dims, no matter what's happened in life. Your light never. There's something, Annie, to people who are just on a path to do great things where their light never dims. And I think about those tragedies and when they happen. And I think, even for me as a human, when the light wanted to dim, they just could not dim because God had just, and so I think the answer I give you is probably going to be an unorthodox answer for our audience today, because it's going to require a challenge. And they may not be ready for this challenge. And that challenge is, and I'm not here to preach religion, but I'm here to tell people to get connected to that light, whatever that light is for them, to get connected to that light. For us, we know who and what that light is, but without spiritual center and deep connection, it's almost impossible. So I would just, and I think in particular in the times that we're in, I think it's really important to find your spiritual center, whatever that is. And I'm not, I don't want to go the proselytical route here of just kind of, dogmatically saying what anybody's faith should be. But I think ultimately it's important to find your faith and find your spiritual center, because that is ultimately, Annie, what it keeps me centered. In fact, it's not even something I have to think about. God has given me such a sense of Him, and His presence, that I don't even have to work hard to try to deal with obstacles. It's just there. Yeah. It's just there.
So you're not only the voice of the NFL, you're like the voice of God, the way that I see it, because God is empowering you to be a vessel to others, and to be a light to others, and to be a model to others. So, oh my gosh, I love that. And I get goosebumps now thinking about it. I think about my own turmoil as well. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. And you're right. And if I could just interject, I think that's what has guided me in my career. I mean, I think if you talk to most actors, most singers, most creative artists, I mean, they usually have some lofty goal, which is to achieve an Oscar or a Grammy. I mean, they want the big break. I don't ever really think about any of those things, actually, because at the end of the day, this is not a career. None of these careers, Annie, are careers that I feel I chose for myself. Yeah. I feel like we're all chosen by God. And so if God chose these for me, He has all the answers. So there's nothing for me to worry about.
That's so nice.
There's nothing for me to worry about. It'll all be fine, because this is what His path is for me. So I can just kind of be, I can kind of sit and mellow out and just do the work and really be the light that I need to be without worrying about the other side of it.
Oh, goodness. I love that. Thank you so much. That's inspiring for me, and it's very motivating for me as well. So sometimes when I'm in my low point, I have to go back and think about, okay, well, it's my purpose, and I think this is why my podcast is what it is because not only is it an opportunity for folks like yourself to be able to come on and tell their story, but I think it's just it's therapeutic for me. It's like the things that I need to hear for myself and for others out there that need to hear it too. So thank you for sharing those. Thank you for sharing everything.
No, absolutely.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your the new album, Sunday Word. Yes, let's talk about that. And when is that releasing, or has it released? I think it's slated for October, is it not?
October 21st.
Okay, perfect.
It's my fourth album. Okay. And it's funny because the acting side and the voice acting side gets all the acclaim, and certainly happy about that. But really, it's the musical roots that resulted in my voiceover career. Quite frankly, I mean, and so I'm really looking forward to Sunday Word, October 21st.
Awesome. Now we have a small snippet of a song that you were going to hear right now. Can you just kind of preface or introduce the song, and then our listeners will hear a small snippet? What
Yeah.
are you listening to?
So actually, this is the new single "Underdog" from that album that's out on September 28th, and of course here in Eagles country, that probably rings a bell with the Philadelphia South base here, because the Eagles were the underdog last year. But I didn't write this song really as a sports anthem. It was really it's really more of a life anthem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's about the underdogs in life, and this is your time to rise up, get up. Prove society wrong, and it's really this wonderful, fusion, Annie, of hip hop, soul, smooth jazz, and funk. And so I've really experimented with amalgamating genres on this album, and I think that's really why I'm really proud of the album.
Awesome. So here is a small snippet for all our listeners now.
In the game of life, those at the top are heavy favorites. Celebrations and victories are shoo-ins, where those daring to defy the odds must embrace the role of underdog. They don't believe in you. They don't believe in you. They don't believe in you. They don't believe.
Well, everybody, you heard that wonderful small sample of Underdog. So be sure to be on the lookout for Leonard Dozier's new album and new single coming out October
21st.
First. Yeah, very cool.
All online, major retailers, and that's iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, etc.
Awesome. Yay, we're excited. Very good. So now, if you could do anything different, I love to ask this question because I love the array of answers, and it to me, it just kind of makes me, think back to, what was I doing at 21 years old? But what would you do if you could do anything differently? What would you tell your 21-year-old self about what you know now? What career changes, or would you change anything?
Wow. I would tell my 21-year-old self that life is getting ready to take a real positive turn for you.
Mm.
And you need to think differently.
Okay.
You need to prepare differently. You need to live differently, because in about 9 years, your life is going to completely change for the better.
Awesome.
You just need to prepare yourself now.
You just need to prepare yourself. I mean, 18 to 21-year-olds are just kind of going with the flow and, doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. And some may have the wherewithal to know what they want to do,
Right.
10 years from that point, but some don't. So this is good. This is good to hear, because
No, absolutely.
knowing what you've already gone through. And yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Be prepared and get ready for what life is going to hand you. Awesome. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. That's great.
Great question.
Yay, thank you. So now, for aspiring singer-songwriters, actors, voiceover actors, and entertainers overall, what parting words can you share with them? What parting words of wisdom can you give them?
Well, I think we're in a climate where, certainly social media is highly influential, and I think more than ever before, rather, we live in a celebrity culture. I think when you just think about real people every day, I mean, I think that there's this sense that we all want to be on TV ultimately. Right. And so certainly for performers, I think now more than ever, you really have to get into it for the right reason, because the market is oversaturated in all forms, whether it's dancing, whether it's music, whether it's singing, acting. I mean, it's the market is oversaturated, and it's probably harder in some ways to break through, because there's this inundation now of talent. So you really have to go into it for the right reason. And here's the other thing that's really important. I think you have to brand yourself today. You have to really, it's not just I sing well, I got a great voice, I look good, I'm a great dancer. I can make beats, or whatever it is that you do. You've got to really kind of brand yourself and find a way to set yourself apart from a marketing standpoint. So what does that mean? They probably, Annie, need to have conversations with people like yourself who are on the PR scene. I mean, honestly, because seriously, they just have to understand that it's not just, in fact, it's really not even about how well you do anything. It's really about, can you brand yourself? I think, and we all know that there are some wildly successful entertainers who may not necessarily be the best singer or actor or dancer, but they've got a niche. And so that's what they found. And that's, it doesn't mean that you trivialize, being talented or the art form, that you trivialize the importance of honing in on your craft. Mm-hmm. But it does that in addition to honing in on your craft, that you do really explore the idea of marketing and branding yourself.
Awesome. All good information and advice for all those who are aspiring to be like you, Leonard, and who want to make a name for themselves. So, brand yourself and I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we've come to the end of our lovely conversation and had so much fun, and I've learned so much about you, and I just know there's so many wonderful things ahead for you. So, and your career is just, it's just starting, or it's just taking off. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be following you. So I'm going to troll.
Likewise, Annie.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to troll your Instagram. We're going to make sure that we keep each other accountable. How's that? Yeah. So where can we follow you, speaking of which?
It starts with my website, leonarddozier.com. Definitely on Instagram. I actually have two pages there, Leonard Dozier Music, which is kind of just a music-centric page about me, my music, upcoming releases, and so forth. And then my official page. And then, of course, on Facebook at Leonard.Dozier1 on Facebook, and Twitter. I think the only ones that I'm not on are like Snapchat, which my daughter keeps trying to get me on, and I'm like, no, I'm on enough already.
Yeah. Oh gosh, you should see me. I'm like juggling. I have two phones sometimes. It's so funny. Hilarious. Well, I will have all of Leonard's social media in the show notes below, so everybody go follow, go like, and see all the wonderful things that are happening. Kind of be in the know. I always love to be in the know, because then you could say, hey, I knew him when, or that kind of stuff. So he's definitely, Leonard is definitely somebody you guys want to follow, and the future of or upcoming NFL films. I'm excited to see more of those. So I'm definitely going to keep tabs of that on that. So, Leonard, thank you so much. Like I said, I had a wonderful time talking with you and learning so much about you. And thank you again for sharing, being vulnerable and being brave, and sharing some of your, intimate and more, sensitive issues and matters and things that happened. And we have nothing but good things for you. We wish you nothing but good things in your future, now and forever. So thank you again.
Thank you, and God bless you. I this beyond just the interview, I'm a big human connection person, and so I love the fact that as human beings that we are now in each other's crosshairs. So continued success to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Annie Talks and learning about Leonard Dozier, one of the most distinctive voices of the NFL. He also has an impressive Barack Obama voice, too. Don't forget his new album, Sunday Word, is releasing on October 21st, available on iTunes and major outlets. I will have all that information along with Leonard's social media links in the show notes below, so be sure to check them out. Now, before we sign off, if you aren't already subscribed to my podcast, I invite you to hit subscribe and be notified anytime we upload a new episode. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you could all please rate and review my podcast, please leave a comment or two. It would really help me out and it would help others to find this podcast too. You can follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. I will have all that information down below in the show notes as well. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider contributing to my Patreon page. Your contributions will help to further the vision and mission of Annie Talks so that we can produce more episodes like this one and many other types of episodes and topics. The Patreon page will also be included in the show notes below. Thank you all again so much for tuning in and keep listening to Annie Talks.
Hi, this is Leonard Dozier, accomplished actor, voice actor, and singer-songwriter, and you're listening to Annie Talks.